Yeah, welcome everyone. I think we can get started. As it says on the screen, this is our second training. So I think only Sister Sumita might have been at the first one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Lauren was there as well. So our first meeting was the Foundation of Human Rights training at the beginning of this year. So this is essentially a series just continuing on to that first Foundational of Human Rights training. If you do want to take a look at that, you can take a look at it on our YouTube just to maybe see how we started off. But today's training is part two of that. And it's titled Grassroots Advocacy. So what we're really going to be exploring today is how ordinary people, such as you and I, can really create real and lasting change within our own communities. That's really the point of today, right? So, yeah, like any other training or meeting that we have, if you have any questions, as we go, please feel free. But I will usually have moments as well just to stop and ask any questions, any clarifications that you need, right? So yeah, feel free to stop me at any moment. But before we start, I do want to start us off with the nano prayer. Can you see my screen just to double check? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
The Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, Amen. Loving God, you called Nano Nagel to be a light in dark places, to see suffering and respond with courage, to walk with the poor, the forgotten, and the excluded. Give us her compassion that we may recognize injustice and not turn away. Give us her courage that we may act even when the cost is great. And give us her hope that we may believe change is possible. May we, like Nano, carry your light into the world, especially where dignity is denied and voices go unheard. We ask this in faith and trust. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right, Naomi, I love the fact that you were praying with me. Please feel free. That's great. All right, guys. So as I said, today we're really focusing on grassroots advocacy, and really just to give a short summary of why we are here. We are here to equip us to be grassroots activists. Simply put, that's really the point of today. So we have a specific training overview and format that we're going to be following. We started off with the Foundation of Human Rights, which was the first training that we had. And really there we focus on what human rights are, and then the three ways and three approaches to advocating for human rights. Today, we are looking at grassroots advocacy. So that's where we are today. And we'll speak a little bit more about that. And then following, we will be doing training on rights holders, duty bearers, and community mapping. And then afterwards, we'll go on to then actually speak about how to run a campaign. So you'll see with this overview that today we're specifically focusing on what is grassroots advocacy and what it consists of. And then only at the last step, we'll actually be looking at how to run a campaign. So just keep that in mind as we're going today. So for today's specific training, we're looking at 4 different specific things that we'll be looking at. So firstly, the levels of advocacy. We'll then be looking at what is grassroots advocacy. So grassroots advocacy itself, and then identifying human rights issues. And lastly, the tree method. Did everyone get the email that I sent with the copy of the tree? Please just give me a thumbs up, an indication. Yeah, perfect. All right. So let's get started. So we're starting off with the levels of advocacy, right? And that's really the different levels in which advocacy exists and the different levels in which we can actually participate in advocacy. So firstly, we have what we're actually going to be focusing on today, which is grassroots advocacy. And that is specifically focused on our communities. So it happens within communities, and it's where ordinary people organize issues that affect them specifically. And then we have the provincial advocacy, and that is still within your country. It's either across states or across provinces, depending on the context of your country. And then we go on to national. That is the country itself, right? It often involves laws, policies, government departments as well. So it is within your specific country. Um, Regional advocacy, that relates to the specific region that you are in, the specific region your country is in. For example, I'm in South Africa. We have SADC, which is the Southern African regional. I forgot what it stands for, but it's Southern African, basically. And that essentially relates to countries that are in Southern Africa, and that is our place of regional advocacy that we would participate in. Or, again, I'm in Africa, the African Union exists, and that again would be regional advocacy. It's within the region. And then last, we have international advocacy that relates to across nations, across regions. And what we are most common with and what we know, that is the United Nations, like we would know. So that participating and engaging with the United Nations would be international advocacy. So obviously these are the different places in which advocacy exists. I do want to emphasize that context does matter in this place. So you could have in some countries where it's actually dangerous to even participate in grassroots advocacy, depending on the context. It's not possible for you to participate in provisional advocacy or national. You don't have safe access to your government. And so you would then participate in regional or international. Right. For example, you have some African countries like Zimbabwe, where that really is quite dangerous sometimes. Naomi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it is sometimes not safe for you to be participating in that sort of advocacy. So you would then go to a different level. But today specifically, we're going to be focusing on grassroots advocacy, as I mentioned. Is that clear? Are there any questions? Please let me know if I'm going too fast as well. I'm more than happy to slow down. Okay, so then we have the reason why we're here, grassroots. So does anyone have an idea on what grassroots actually is? When you think of the word grassroots alone, what comes to mind?
It'd be good. Everyone can unmute themselves and popcorn style.
Yeah. I mean, grassroots is the work of a justice contact. So I think we should, just
It's the
hear
people
what you
around
think.
you. It's what's happening immediately around you in your
Yeah.
city, perhaps in the rural area around you. It's
Mhm.
topical, relevant. Um, yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I think of the word community, like one-to-one relationships, and then you expand that. It's the conversations that happen in coffee shops or in the hair salon, barber shops, and just that one-to-one connection that gets bigger and bigger in community.
Mm.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. That's really nice. And yeah, like you said, Lauren, and as well, Michelle, grassroots is your community. It's everyday people, and it's specifically community focused. So I like what you said, Lauren, when you said that it's one-on-one relationships that eventually creates the community. Because I think a lot of the time we overcomplicate it. It really is just everyday people, one-on-one relationships that create a larger community, right? And that's exactly what grassroots is, very simply put. And then advocacy. We spoke a little bit about this in our last training. So if we do remember that, or if you just something that you know, what is advocacy? More than welcome to just say a word. You don't even have to explain.
Standing up for people who have no voice.
Yeah.
It's in their self-interest. It's not your self-interest. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So advocacy is creating long-term systemic change. So when we're looking at advocacy, we're really asking questions like, why is this happening? Who's being affected? Who has the power to make this change happen, right? Those are the kind of questions that we're asking when we're looking at advocacy. And yeah, as I said, we did speak about this in our last training. So if that's something that you do remember as well. So now we've explained what grassroots is. We said that it's your community, it's everyday people, it's community focused. We've said that advocacy is creating long-term systemic change. Simply put it together, what is grassroots advocacy? So grassroots advocacy would then relate to everyday people organizing together to create long-term change in their communities. I want to emphasize that in their communities part, simply because it's easy, well, it's possible for us to create change in another community, in another nation, in another place. But really the thing that separates grassroots advocacy from anything else is the fact that it is in your community specifically. So throughout this training, I want us to continue thinking about our own communities. How can we apply what is being said here, what we're talking about into our own communities? And that's really what we're focusing on when we're talking about grassroots advocacy specifically, right? So it's context specific. Like I mentioned with the levels of advocacy, everything is context specific within your community, what works, what doesn't. And that's something that only you would know as a representative of your community, right? Right. And so this was something that we used in our last training with regards to advocacy. But now looking at grassroots advocacy, it's really about creating long-term systemic change by influencing, excuse me, policies and social structures. Right. When you're focusing, you're looking and addressing the root causes of issues to bring about sustainable reform by holding duty barriers accountable. Like I said at the beginning, we'll speak a little bit more about duty barriers in our next training, but just keep that in mind. An example of that is influencing ward councillors within your communities, or in some communities where differently able children are not necessarily going to school because of the stigma around that. That is a way in order for you to participate in grassroots advocacy by influencing parents, the parents of those children to take their children to school. Those are things that are really good examples of grassroots advocacy. Right. So just lastly, when we're talking about grassroots advocacy, it's really a bottom-up approach. It's where the community itself leads the work for themselves instead of, outside organizations making decisions on their behalf. Does that make sense to everyone? What grassroots advocacy is and how that relates to our community specifically? Are there any questions? Any comments as well, if there's anything that you've perhaps seen in your own communities that you think would apply to this?
Just a comment from me is that, I'm sure the more time you all spend with IPA, you'll know that we do a lot of international advocacy and grassroots advocacy. Those are the two areas that we have a huge focus on. And our justice contacts are really our grassroots activists. We believe as IPA and presentation world, really, that the experts on the issues in their communities are the communities themselves. And we just need to equip them and support them, which is ultimately you, to create change in your communities. And as you're doing that in your communities, we will simultaneously be doing the advocacy at the international level. So we're coming at these issues from two different layers of advocacy, really. But the international advocacy is absolutely impossible without the grassroots advocacy, because everything that you're all doing in your communities, that's what we're using in the international sphere. If we didn't have that, we don't believe we would have the right to speak in international platforms, because unless we have people in grassroots communities who are firsthand saying this is the experience of people, unless we have that, we really shouldn't be speaking in international platforms. There's a saying that some people, for a few years, it was used often, but I think it's become quite unpopular now and people aren't using it anymore. But there's this term, we will be the voice for the voiceless. And we don't agree with that, because everyone has a voice. It's just that we don't always have equal opportunities to be heard. And that's what we do as IPA, is in our communities, you are ensuring that people who society pushes away and says, you're not important, your thoughts aren't important, your experiences aren't important, What we are saying is that they are so important that we must create platforms for them to be heard, even at the United Nations. And so that link between the grassroots and the international is vital and needs to be really protected. But I would go as far as to say, and I mean, this is the total truth, the biggest impact we can have is in the grassroots. That is where real change is felt in the lives of people. And that is the most important, which is why we have amazing justice contacts, and it's why we want to support you guys in what you do. Because without grassroots, none of those other levels of advocacy can succeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jess. Yeah, that's very, very true. And yeah, when we're speaking about grassroots advocacy, really, the whole point of this is for us to be able to lead and create a community campaign, right? Within our own communities. So that's really what we're going to be doing now. We're going to help you run a grassroots advocacy campaign, but that is, of course, the goal of the entire training series. Right now, though, before we do that, we need to be able for us to actually be able to understand the issues within our communities, to even be able to run a campaign on them. And in order for us to do that, we need to identify the issues. So that's what we're going to be focusing on right now, identifying the issues within our communities. And that's using the tree method that I sent out, right? So the tree method is a very simple and easy way for us to be able to identify issues in our communities. And it's simply put in three different levels, right? So you have the symptoms, you have the systems, and you have the roots. So with the symptoms, these are the visible problems or challenges that our community faces. This is what a lot of us often focus on, right? These are the issues that you can see every day. It's issues like unemployment or littered streets. It's an issue that you see and is present in your everyday life as a community, right? Then we have the systems within our communities. These are structures, they're rules, they're institutions, and they're everyday practices that really shape how our society functions. A lot of the time, you'll see that the systems help maintain and often help create the symptoms, right? So, for example, you have inadequate education systems that make it impossible for people to even be able to enter the job market and adapt to the job market, then creating that symptom, which is unemployment. Or you'll have an inefficient municipal waste management systems, which is an issue that is very common within even our townships here in South Africa, where then that creates, littered streets. And it creates that issue of littered streets, which is that symptom. So you really see the relation between the system, which is a structure that really creates and maintains the symptom, right? But then you have the roots, which is something that we spoke about even in our last training. The roots is really where we want, as people of Nano, we want to focus on. Right. These are the deeper underlying causes, such as beliefs, such as values, history, and even power relations, especially power relations that help create and keep those systems in place. So you see the relation. You start off with the symptoms that we see, and then you have the systems that maintain those symptoms. But then you have the roots that really help keep those systems in place. So it's a domino effect, basically, right? An example of roots are things like historical inequality in oppressive systems, where people weren't able to get access to education. So then it creates those inadequate education systems, which then creates unemployment, right? Or you have social beliefs that certain communities deserve fewer resources, and that then creates inefficient municipal waste systems for certain communities. Like I used that example in South Africa, that is a common belief that is present in our country, that then went on to create that system where people in certain areas don't have access to waste systems. That then creates that symptom of littered streets. right? So it's very important for us to be looking at this way of thinking as change makers. When we're looking at making change within our mission, within our communities, our mission as nano people is not just to focus on the symptoms, which is something that is visible. It's visible problems. Our mission is not just to focus on the symptoms there, which is all good and well. But the issue with that is you make a change for today. What we really want to do is we want to be change makers that make long-lasting change, right? And that's why we really should be focusing on the roots of our systems, right? I think we see it in our world today. A lot of the issues that are present in our world, issues of xenophobia, anti-immigration attacks, those are the roots of those are underlying beliefs that our society has that has then created a system, created symptoms that we now see today. So it's very easy for us in our society to now see how those roots have created systems and symptoms that we're still facing and dealing with every day, right? So that's really why it's important for us to focus on that. Does that make sense? Are there any questions? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I just want to emphasize the roots and why they matter, right? Because symptoms show the problem, as we saw. It's a problem we see every day. Systems then make the problem, but then roots explain why the problem exists. And once we understand that, we can really focus on eradicating those roots, right? Perfect. So I want us now to do a short activity. Since it is a small group, I think we can actually just stay like this and we'll deal with one scenario. There are two scenarios, but we'll just deal with scenario one. And we'll see how time goes. Maybe we can even do the second scenario, right? Okay. So really, before we even go into the scenario, I do want to emphasize that this activity is for us to be able to get our minds thinking about how we view the issues within our communities, right? So really the point of this activity is for us to be able to read the scenario, understand the scenario, dissect it, and then look at the symptoms, the systems, and the roots. So we have a scenario here where a rural community faces regular water shortages. Many families travel long distances to collect water. Young people struggle to find work. School resources and healthcare services are limited. Community members feel ignored by government leaders despite repeated requests for support, including ongoing attempts to secure a meeting with local government officials that have not been successful. In contrast, a large corporation operating nearby was able to secure a meeting with local government within a week. Meanwhile, these companies continue using significant amounts of local natural resources while the surrounding communities remain underdeveloped. Right. Does that make sense? Perfect. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at the symptoms, the systems involved, and then we'll look at the root causes. So I'll just keep this up. And really, this is just an interactive session. So let me know what you think, right? So we're first going to start off with the symptoms, right? So what are the visible issues that you're seeing within the scenario, within this community?
Just remember to unmute yourselves, everyone.
Yes, please.
So does anything look not right here?
Yeah.
The lack of water would be one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The water.
And government, local government ignoring them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think also the long distances.
Unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
Unemployment is also a symptom.
Yes. 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 Anyone else? So we've said water. Jess, you said long distances.
Struggling to get in touch with government.
I'm trying to wonder what symptom do we see for healthcare services that are limited? Maybe
that
in
is
such community, maybe in such a problem in a community like that, you find that such a community could be experiencing maybe outbreaks of things like measles, or you find that the children there could be suffering from things like polio, things that could have the children got immunized for. But then it's a symptom that we see now because the place never had enough healthcare services.
Mm.
So
That's
Yeah,
very
it's
the
also the draining of the local natural resources.
mm,
So the people haven't got, not only have they got a lack of attention and all the other practical issues with health, lack of water, struggling, etc., they've got the big companies using all their local resources that they need.
yeah,
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
yeah.
Um,
I'm
so
They're
also
just being
thinking that
stripped
maybe
of
these
everything.
big companies that are using the resources would actually
Yes,
be leaving behind a lot of environmental degradation, because you
Mm.
yes,
find that like in rural areas here in Zimbabwe, we have mining companies that
Mm.
yes.
just go, and maybe whether that they are digging up chrome or something, then they just leave these big empty pits and things like that, and which are not even secure. And we've had incidences of people drowning and dying in such places. So you
mm,
Mm.
find that big companies that are not giving back anything to the societies, they just mine what they want and they go. But they are not doing anything in terms of environmental um, sustenance and maintenance. They leave the places degraded instead of there being development.
yeah,
Mm.
and that could be the further effects even of the current symptoms, you know.
Mm.
So like you have, if the problem continues, that could be what it gets to, if that makes
Mm.
Yeah,
sense. So you
yes.
have like them taking the local natural resources. Eventually, that's what it could get to. It could create another symptom even. All right.
Yeah.
So we have the water shortages that you've said, and the long distances, unemployment as well. Is there any other last minute things that you're seeing?
The school resources, like
Yeah,
quality, like the kids' education is going to be very low if they don't have access to resources in
yeah,
this. So that
yeah,
would be a problem. Mm.
yeah. Okay.
The problems are limitless here. Like there's actually so
Mm,
many different issues that need to be
yeah.
addressed.
So
Mm.
it's a long road, but um, I think what's like sad is that this is not even like some crazy made up story. It's
Mhm.
the reality of a lot of communities as well.
Mhm.
You know, so it's really allowing us to step into the reality of a lot of communities, really.
Mhm.
So when we're looking at the symptoms in general, just to talk about that, we have the water shortages, long distance travel for water, the youth unemployment, poorly resourced schools that you mentioned, limited healthcare services, that sense of poverty and underdevelopment that was explained also there. As you said, Michelle, community voices being ignored by the local government. And then you also have the unequal treatment between corporation and communities, and the lack of access to their own resources that we mentioned there. All right. So with that, so we've seen now these are the symptoms. Apologies, let me just go back to that. These are the symptoms. What would the systems then be for this community? So remember that systems relates to the institutions, structures that help to maintain those symptoms. So what is helping maintain these issues like lack of water, lack of resources? Um, what system is helping maintain that?
The economic system, the business system,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
um, the systemic lack of power that
yeah.
they have or voice.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, the corrupt local government that only listens to corporations and not the people.
Corrupt
Mm.
is right, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
And they're stripped of any resources. So that's hard, isn't it? Very
yeah,
hard.
yeah, for sure. No, I agree. So we have, sorry, this is just not moving. Is it moving on your side now?
No.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
I'll
there we
get you.
go. There we go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have weak local government accountability, as we said,
Mhm.
um, because clearly no one is holding that government accountable for them to even be able to do the job that they set out to do. We have poor public service delivery systems. Um, like we said, with the lack of resources for school, the unemployment, those all are systems that created that issue. Limited investment in rural communities. We have the corruption that you mentioned, Lauren, lack of community participation in decision making, so that the community doesn't have the power to do that. And then we have education and employment systems that exclude young people, which then leads to that youth unemployment, right? So does this make sense to everyone? Is it coming together properly?
Yes.
Cool.
Education. Mhm.
Perfect. And then we do our root causes, right? So we've looked at now the symptoms. What are the issues? We've looked at the systems. So what are the root causes? These are, like we mentioned here, that root causes are deep underlying issues and underlying causes, like beliefs, our values, our history, power relations. I mean, obviously, we don't know the historical context of this community. But what are the beliefs that you're seeing? What are the values that you're seeing? The power relations that you're seeing that are helping to keep this certain system in place? So, what is helping the government be corrupt? What is helping the corruption, helping them not be able to access resources? What is causing that?
The belief that profits matter more than people on the earth.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
very important.
Probably the
Very,
I'm
like
thinking that I'm
wealthy.
thinking that such a community is where we have, instead of bottom up, is the other way. It's
Mm.
top to bottom. Those who
yes,
are in the top, they are the ones who make the decisions and they decide what are we doing for this community, what will we not do. They don't listen to the voices of the people. So it's not bottom up, but it's the other way that has caused this problem.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, very true.
Mm.
Anything else, Jess? I think you were saying something.
Well, I was just saying that, like, I'm sure in many of our communities, we can relate to is the fact that probably this company has money and they're seen as more valuable in society.
Yeah.
And a rural community. I don't know if any of you have examples in your countries, but in South Africa, one of our provinces is really rural, and for some reason that just makes the government feel like they don't have to give them any service delivery. Like, and it's kind of like a urban versus rural, or like looking down
Yeah,
on people from rural communities. I think that belief can really influence the services that people decide
for
to
sure.
give.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
I would also like to think like looking at our rural situations here in Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of rural urban migration. So you find that
Mm-hmm.
development really is mostly concentrated in the urban areas. Although unemployment is prevalent everywhere, but people think because they are desperate, there are no
Yeah.
services that are there in the rural area. So they just think that by migrating into the urban area, maybe they'll get something. They could even just come to be vendors or something like that,
Mm,
nothing meaningful. But they are thinking it's better to be a vendor in an urban environment and take care of myself than just to lie there in the rural area not doing anything. So I'm
exactly.
thinking that maybe the lack of progress in this rural area could be
Mm,
because of the rural urban migration. A lot of the young and people like that, they've moved to the urban areas thinking that it's better in the urban areas. So it could be a effect of migration as well.
yeah, that's a really good point. And you'll find that, yeah, it also goes back to that belief of the fact that there's nothing in rural areas, um, that even makes people move to urban areas there. Yeah.
Or even
So
like
we've looked,
sorry, like you just said, people think it's not worth it. And I think a lot of
sorry.
companies would rather spend crazy amounts of money to build their big offices or factories in closer to the city. But people don't want to invest in rural areas, like,
Yeah,
invest in infrastructure and building and bringing companies there. So yeah, it really seems like this local government group is just dismissing the local people, kind of not giving them the time of day to even meet. I think it just shows how they think, what their beliefs are when it comes to who's valuable in society and who's not.
exactly. And we've really gotten down to the beliefs of this community, which is very important, right? And those are the root causes. So we've identified that there's that generational disadvantage within the communities. There's the concentration of power and wealth, which is we can see, and there's a marginalization of rural communities, which is what Ma and Jess were mentioning as well. And there's that lack of access to community leaders, social and economic inequality, and belief that profit is more important than people. So money talks basically in this community. And that's why those leaders and those corporations were able to get a meeting with the local government so quickly, right? So we've looked at the scenario and we've looked at the fact that these are the root causes. What I want to emphasize for us is the fact that the root causes are really where we should be focusing. Because if you look at it, if you are just solving the issue of unemployment, for example, so you give the youth employment, what will happen in a few years when a new leadership comes in and still continues that belief of the fact that the rural areas don't deserve that attention? It'll go back to the same issue of unemployment, right? So the problem itself isn't completely over. But instead, if you focus on the root causes, if you focus on that belief that profit is more important than people, that will help in ensuring that that issue is gone for good, right? So when we are running campaigns, the community campaigns, what we really need to focus on is the roots. And you don't necessarily have to focus on all the roots. It's a big job, you know. But what we then do is we pick one root cause that is prevalent in the society, and we focus on um, dealing with that root cause specifically, right? For example, the marginalization of rural communities, finding ways to empower that community itself, and ensuring that that is something that isn't an issue anymore. That is a way in which to deal with that. Jace, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks. I just want to say that, a lot of, in the previous training, we spoke about what charity work is, what raising awareness is, and what advocacy is. And so charity work would really be responding to those symptoms. And it's important that we do continue charity work and we do continue assisting with those symptoms because people are suffering now as a result of those symptoms. But as nano people, we really there's a kind of percentage that people talk about when they talk about advocacy work, and that's 40-60. If you're going to be doing 40% charity work, you really need to be doing 60% advocacy. Because like Bandiswa was saying, if we are not tackling the mindsets and those beliefs, which ultimately, in this scenario, don't believe that people in rural communities need equality and need access to infrastructure, it doesn't matter how much of the resources we cater to, those problems are going to continue forever. And when we finish, we think we've succeeded with addressing one of those symptoms. Like we saw earlier, there was like 50 of them. And then even on those, they expand and they expand and they expand. So really, we need to be doing 40% of helping with that charity work, addressing those symptoms. But we really need to be doing 60% advocacy, and start saying, why is it that people are not having access to their basic rights? What is it? What is it about us as society that is placing more value on some people and some communities than others? And so when we are creating our campaigns, just a seed to plant, is that we must make sure that there's elements of charity and raising awareness. Like that is fantastic, but we need to, I think advocacy is often left out when we're thinking of doing things in communities. And we just need to make sure that as leaders in our society, that we are the ones who never forget advocacy, and we are the ones who keep saying, okay, but if we want to end this in the long term, we need to succeed in changing those mindsets of challenging the generational disadvantage, really challenging that concentration of power and wealth, so that when programs start coming up, it's less likely that they are just going to collapse under the pressure and the power of those systems. I'm just picturing, communities um, in an example of South Africa, people would say, oh, during apartheid, all the freedom fighters, they became so violent. And I think I read this amazing interview about it where one of the freedom fighters was saying, well, we tried all the systems. We tried to, do peace talks. We tried to submit paperwork. We tried to take them to the courts. We tried to do all these things. But those systems were set up to make sure that they still failed. And so we really need to make sure that our systems are not influenced by those root mindsets, which ultimately is saying that some are more worthy than others. So how do we get our systems to be equal so that all people have access, and then the symptoms won't exist anymore?
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, it really is about how we as a community see each other. I think that's the most that's a very important part of really identifying those root causes. And the amazing fact, actually, I've just realized is all three of you, besides Lene and Jess, are working in schools, working with young people. And there's a lot of power within that, in terms of education, and dealing with direct advocacy work, dealing with the root causes, of young people, empowering them as well to participate in that. So it really is, I think, a really important role and position that you get to be in when it comes to advocacy work. And just that as well, as I said, it's context based. Advocacy work doesn't necessarily have to be you going to the municipal leaders and striking up a store, like striking there specifically. It can be you even changing the way that your students think about society. That is a form of advocacy itself, changing the way that the next generation thinks about themselves. That is dealing with the roots to make sure that the issues don't continue. So really lots of power that you have actually as people who are dealing with young people. And yeah, that's basically what we are emphasizing today is the root causes. So we've learned symptoms, we've learned systems, and we've learned root causes. Are there any discussions, any questions that you have, even can be specific to your community as well, or just with the training itself? Anything that you have to point out?
Did we quickly do the next scenario? I feel like we'll be even quicker with that one now that we've
Sure, yeah.
done this one.
Okay, we can do the next scenario quickly. An urban area, has experienced a growing mental health crisis over the last 5 years. Many young people feel isolated, they feel anxious and unsupported, while substance abuse and emotional distress continue to rise. The government recently closed the community mental health center due to budget limitations. When community members asked local leaders for support and for the center to reopen, they were told that available funding was being used to develop a new office block instead. So what are the symptoms that you're seeing? What are the visible issues that you're seeing with this scenario? Also a scenario that is very popular in our society right now. A lot of people are dealing with this exact issue.
The growing mental health crisis, which then leads to substance abuse and emotional distress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Anything else?
The symptoms we can also see that is that we will see street kids.
Sorry, is there?
We are going to see street kids.
Yeah.
Yes, children who are living on the streets due to drugs and substance abuse.
Yeah, definitely a future issue there with regards to this. Yeah.
If I may add one,
Yes,
it's again the same with the previous one, is that ignorance from the government to not
exactly.
listen to community. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
School dropouts.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I think suicide can become an issue here.
Yeah.
Uh, broken families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would even go as far as to say that once you have a mental health crisis, that also soon becomes a physical health crisis. Like a
Mm.
lot of people become very sick due to their mental health being, lack thereof of mental health.
Yeah.
I think we can also have issues of xenophobia arising from this.
With regards to the mental health or what?
Yes, with regards to, because they are taking up, they are taking drugs, they feel unsupported, and they've got a lot of emotions and distress. So they can always, fight the others and think that others have got it in a better way than myself.
Blame, yeah. There's going to be
Yes,
that
so
us versus
yes, so
them
mhm,
mentality. Someone else is responsible for my problems, basically. Yeah.
yes,
I'm sure you're watching the news, Ma, about South Africa at the moment. And that's exactly
yes,
what's happening. It's
Yeah.
absolutely heartbreaking. Is that instead of our leaders taking responsibility, they're telling local people, oh, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
It's
mm.
people from other African countries.
Zimbabwe. And
Yeah.
my daughter is there, and I'm so scared every day. I'm thinking, Lord,
Oh my gosh.
So sorry.
Yeah.
It's we're very ashamed. It
Mm.
should not be happening. But yeah. But I think we've pretty much identified a lot of the links.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, as you mentioned, rising mental health struggles and that substance abuse that you mentioned. Um, but there's also one of isolation and loneliness among young people that we're seeing in our society even now. And that often causes feelings of pessimism, feeling like, the future's just, there's no hope,
mm,
hopelessness, basically. And
yes,
then lack of access to mental health support and community frustration and hopelessness, as I mentioned. Those are really the issues that we're seeing in this community. And then the systems that you're seeing, what are the systems that you see in the society that are helping enable and maintain the symptoms? So the government, of course, the way in which the government is viewing mental health, for sure.
It's capitalism again, because here it's like the office block is obviously for companies,
Yeah.
for
Every,
business.
I
It's
always say every problem dates back to capitalism.
capitalism. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely capitalism. Um,
Uh, I, I love how you put in quotations, budget limitations.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Because
less
most of
about
the time it isn't.
limitations and it's more about, again, what are you favoring? And it
Exactly.
seems like here, whoever is in charge here, they favor capitalism and big and a business, even if it's not big business. I mean, I think creating jobs is important, but I mean, sure, create, more jobs. But if someone doesn't have access to their mental health care, if people are really struggling, they're not going to be able to do those jobs anyway. I just think about like so many kids. Sorry, guys, I'll always use South Africa as an example, but that's because it's my context, and I don't want to speak on behalf of others. But in South Africa, we, a lot of our kids they have PTSD because of all the violence in the townships, and then they have to go to work, and then
Yeah.
with every other person, and every time they hear sound, they freak out, and it makes it incredibly hard to do your job if your mental
Mm.
health is so damaged.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, don't apologize for speaking about South Africa, where, we are context specific here, so um very important. But yeah, it is about the capitalism, going back to that, really. Those are the symptoms. It's underfunded mental health services, government budget priorities, sorry, that favor development projects over community well-being, capitalism, weak public healthcare systems, poor access to affordable counseling and support services, limited youth support systems, and a lack of community consultation in decision making. We saw that in both both scenarios where the community is not consulted when making decisions. And they don't think of the community at all, right? Lastly, what are the roots? So what are the root causes of these? What are the root causes and beliefs and structures that are now creating these systems that we saw?
If I may add, I'm
Yes,
sorry, I
please.
have already read the slides, but I'm just going to give my opinion. I think there is a lack of understanding of the importance of mental health. So that's like a touch on belief that the specific government have. Yeah, they don't realize the snowball effect that mental health can do to not just a community, but to a whole country that
Yeah,
will come into a crisis. Like we see with the xenophobia, once you've implanted a certain belief system or fear in people, it can completely overwhelm and cause violence and brutality that wasn't necessary in the first place. So
yeah.
definitely a lack of understanding of people in power that obviously are not listening um, to their community.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's also some unstated situations. We don't know why the mental health thing level of young people has declined over the last 5 years. We just don't know. Like, when we had COVID, Melbourne was the most shut down city in the world. So we spent weeks at home, not being able to go out and having to, or you could just go to the local supermarket. And so now that those children who were in primary school at that time are well and truly into secondary school. And there
Yeah.
are all sorts of traces of mental health concern because of that disconnection.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just we don't know in that scenario why there's been 5 years of decline. What's happened?
And
So that
and
would be a cause that we don't know about. We'd have to
yeah.
investigate. Yeah.
Exactly. A lack of actually caring to investigate, and a lack of, wanting to educate yourself,
Mm,
on those issues. Yeah.
mm,
And a
And
good
understand.
example with COVID. Yeah,
Sorry, just to add to that, like, and to understand, because I think also a lot of people don't care what's going on with the youth and young people.
exactly.
And so they're not actually like, I love what you brought up, Michelle, because it's so true. Like, kids are being kids, or, these college students are doing whatever they're doing. But like, actually, when are we pausing to go, but why? Why
Exactly.
is this
mm,
behavior happening? And
mm,
that is a root cause. But the fact that we won't even look into that shows the other root cause, which is how we think of young people and how
mm,
and we don't think they need to be prioritized.
mm,
That's
Sure.
good. Yeah.
Deep. Yeah.
I was thinking that also the mindset of the leaders is that when they look into issues of health, they don't want to look anything like at mental health or
Mm,
emotional distress. They just want to look to treat health in terms of the physical things like,
mm,
okay, people have got something like maybe we are looking at cancer, maybe we are looking at headaches, maybe we are
mm.
looking at, but they don't want to invest in issues to do with emotional distress and things
Yes.
like that. So you find that when it comes to issues of the mind, they just think, oh, this generation, they are so spoiled, or they really
Yeah.
don't want
mm,
to invest in it financially.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
Very
I think
true.
this is a good example as well, for you guys, working with young people. Like, I
mm,
think it's something you see every day, with in the spaces that you work in. It's really, yeah, taking over our society. So
But also, I love that
very
this
nice.
came up because it shows that you guys are really able to delve into what are the roots and ask these questions.
Exactly.
This makes me very
Exactly.
happy to know that our justice contacts are able to dissect these, these
Yeah.
situations. That's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And really just looking at the roots, it's prioritizing profits and infrastructure over people's well-being. We mentioned that that stigma around mental health. You know, we have this belief that mental health is not something that should be spoken of, not something that should be prioritized. And then that neglect of vulnerable communities. And lastly, the disconnection, as I said, between leaders and community needs. So really, these are the roots, the symptoms, and the systems of both scenarios. And yeah, as Jess said, I'm really happy to see that this is something that we're able to think of. Even for me, it's something that I am now, able to do with these scenarios. I don't think it's something that we do often, where we see one problem in society and we really question it and dig deeper. What are the systems? What are the roots? You see homelessness and you want to, as Jess said, participate in charity, give people food, give people clothing, but it doesn't always deal with the root issue. Um, so that really is something that we should look at. These are issues that are present in our everyday lives, and it's issues that we can participate and dissect in the way that we did now. So I hope that was helpful for you as people who are working in your communities in different ways. And I hope that it's something that you can also put into context into your community specifically. Very, very important there. Are there any questions, any points of discussion? So just for our next training now, so we've looked at grassroots advocacy, the levels of advocacy. We've looked at the ways to think of the issues in our community, very important. And we've really been able to dissect and look at those issues in our communities and see how we're supposed to view the problems in our communities. So for the next training, I really would like us to look at this tree that I sent and to look at the issues, look at the symptoms within your communities. What are the visible issues within your communities? Is it xenophobia, like we mentioned? Is it, unemployment? What are the visible issues that you're seeing? I'm sure we won't even have to sit down for too long. Something we can even thinking of now, as we're speaking. But then look at the systems that really keep these symptoms in place. What are the different symptoms in your in your communities that help keep these symptoms in place? And then, most importantly, I really want us to start looking at the roots. Why do these problems exist? I think as a Gen Z, I'm always asking why, why? And for once, it's actually useful. In this scenario, it's really important to be asking, why is this happening? Really looking at that. So I want us to please, do this for our next training. And then for our next training, we'll be looking at rights holders and duty bearers, and looking at really the community strength, community mapping, as I mentioned. So I hope that this was a good foundation for our next training, for us to be able to start thinking of that. And that next training will be understanding power. So I will be sending information on that closer to the time. But yeah, I hope this was helpful for you as people who are, constantly hit with the issues in your communities. Hope that it's also just puts in a sense of hope. When you're looking at advocacy, it's often difficult to even know where to start. So this is a really good place to start when you're looking at that, right? Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I would actually want to say thank you for the two examples that you gave us that we worked on. I think they
Yeah.
were really good just to get us thinking, and it makes you realize of the problems that we really face at grassroots. Thank you so much for those examples.
Thank you. And thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your input as well.
Wonderful. It
Thanks,
was
everyone.
wonderful.
And
Okay.
we're really looking forward to kind of hearing in the next session everyone's kind of what your thoughts and your unique contexts. What do you think your issues are on the root causes? I think it's going to be lovely for all of us to get that insight into each other's countries as well.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And I like Jess's, I don't know if everyone saw the quote when I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why the poor have no food, they call me a communist. And that's so I think what's sad is that's so relevant for our society even today.
Well,
So
I mean, one
yeah,
of those systems that we talk about is capitalism.
it
And
is the system. Yeah.
is the most
Yeah.
successful system. And a lot of
Yeah.
people will say, "Oh, capitalism isn't working," and like it's working perfectly, beautifully.
Yeah.
This is how it's supposed to work. Is that
Exactly.
1% gets everything and the rest doesn't, and the rest
Yeah.
have to suffer. So it's a very good system and it's working very well. And it tells us a lot about the roots, what we think of each other as a global society, um, which
Sure.
is which is heartbreaking. But at the same time, a lot of people are stepping up, doing a lot of charity, doing a lot of raising awareness, but also we're doing the advocacy. We're starting to undo a lot of what has been done, change minds. And what did Nelson Mandela say? If you can be taught to hate, you can be taught to love. And so it is possible for us to help people change their minds and to change the way we think and engage with each other. And that's where we really, as IPA people, have this amazing superpower because no matter where you go, you can tell when you're around presentation people, there's a sense of community and acceptance and love, but also a refusal to let injustice pass by. And so, yeah, I think this is a good step for us to make sure that all the work that we're doing, that we're remembering that 60% advocacy as well.
Yeah.